A lot of times people don't look at people in the eyes because they need to gather their thoughts so they can avoid brain farts. And I know it comes off as disrespect. It's like, why are you not looking at me when you're talking to me? But that's not always the case. And oftentimes it's because people are low self-esteem, or they're shy. But sometimes, actually, oftentimes, it's because people need to gather their thoughts so they don't have so that their brain don't crash, because looking at you can be overwhelming. In the military, you guys see the movies. The drill sergeant, don't eyeball me, boy. And you got the private in boot camp that's looking straight ahead. There's two reasons why. One, everybody says, oh yeah, you don't want to disrespect your drill sergeant. That's the Army. You got to, maintain respect, and you guys are standing in formation and standing in line. But once you go to PLDC, which is Primary Leadership and Development Club course, or once you go to drill sergeant school, one of the reasons why the military don't want the privates and the young boots to look at the drill sergeant in the eye is because the sergeant needs to make sure that the young soldier can snap and remember information instantly. If he allows him to look at him in the eye, they teach us this in the military. If he allows him to look at it, he'll fuck it up. He'll not be able to answer a question. He won't be able to get the azimuth right on the map, and he'll fuck around and get the whole platoon killed. So being in boot camp, one of the biggest things is don't look me in the eye. Look away. Look straight ahead. I'm over here yelling at you, but look straight ahead. And I want you to snap that information. And by doing that, you could recall it faster. So he kind of came hard on her when he was telling her, this disrespect or whatever, because some people just look away so they can get their shit together when they speak. That's it.
Yeah, I'm gonna shoot Alan some bail on that, man. I think we I think we overanalyzing that, man. The brother, he hosts quite a few of those interviews, and I think again this goes back to some of the conflicting messages that we tell women. We want respect. One of the ways that we think and interpret respect is you look me in my eye when I have a conversation with you. That way, I know we're engaged, we're locked in. So I didn't find issue with him correcting her in that moment. That's the way he has conversations. That's his personal thing. I didn't think nothing of it really. I understood where he was going with it. And yeah, and I also get that people look away, like I look away to gather my thoughts, right? But we do teach young men that when you're engaged in conversation, man to man, yo, look me in my eye, boy, when I'm talking to you. I tell my sons that, look me in my eye, right? So again, this is some of this conflicting messages that we tell the women. It's okay, look away if you need to look away. No, engage, so I know that you're paying attention to what I say, and then you check it for understanding in those conversations. But I think everybody hit it out the park with answering the question so far. That the empathy that women seek is one sided. I think Shan talked about women being selfish. He hit on a couple things with these heifers, right? I agree. I think about the Antoine Fisher, man, and this is one of the reasons why I advocate for these boys so tough, man. That poem, "Who Will Cry for the Little Boy?" When something happens to a young woman, there is an uproar, and rightfully so. It's all points bulletin. It's the village comes out to surround and protect. My bad, Hank. You talked about pedestalizing that woman, and I agree with you 1000%. That Disney princess treatment, I think that absolutely contributes to it. But when something happens to a young lady, heaven and earth is moved to protect that young lady. But when something happens, I'm not even talking about a grown man, little boy. It's he'll be all right. It's all right. Toughen up. What are you crying for? Right? Meanwhile, that little boy suffers that traumatic experience and goes out because he doesn't know how to process or deal with his emotions. He goes out and affects that on other people, bleeding all over people who never cut him. Right? And so with that said, I think the empathy that women seek is one-sided, and I think like Shan said, is built into their DNA. And I think that when brothers have understanding, sympathy for that, right? We know how to deal better. We know how to deal better, you know, and so that these conversations don't become a waste of time, but we can begin to move the needle forward in the discussion. But Trev, I'm curious to hear you, brother, on this one.
True. Really, I like that last part of what you said, that women don't have the empathy, right? So with that, they don't have it. So a lot of times we feel like there's some ill intent behind it, or maybe they're just completely narcissistic. And although they may absolutely have some narcissistic tendencies, not all the time do these women even understand that perspective. Like we were talking about earlier, they just don't have the ability to even see it like that. Because like Shane said earlier, women are selfish by nature. So they're not going out here trying to be a douchebag and say, look, you know what, the hell with this guy. They're just bred like this. It's always been about them. They've never had to help anyone else out. They've never had to contribute to somebody else's life like that. So now it's a maternal instinct when you have children. But for a man, sometimes they just really don't understand that we are human beings, that we actually feel. And we're not allowed to show emotions the way that women are. So to us, we like a brick wall. It's hard for them to understand that we could feel the same way that they feel. All they can ever focus on is their own issues. So that's the main problem for me, is that I really feel like a lot of these women, and I talk to a lot of women, they just don't consider it. And that's the main thing. You know, when you have a great woman, the number one trait that I look for is consideration. Are you consider? Do you consider how I feel? Do you consider what would help my day go better? Do you consider what would help my life be better? Do you consider me? That's the main thing. That's something that women are missing. Consideration. They just don't have the ability, because they weren't trained that way, or a lot of times they're not willing to. If you can't consider me and consider my thoughts, consider what it is that I want to do with my life, and even what I want to do for our family, then we're not going to work ever. That's the main problem they have, is consideration. Number one for me. And they can't sometimes. And when you see women who behave like that, you better run. I kind of felt like, I love the way he presented the question, because just the way it had her on stuck for a second, and she really had to gather her thoughts. It was like, damn, because you could tell that's a question she wasn't even faced with yet. And a question she probably never gave herself, because she really had to collect her thoughts just to think about it. Like, damn, wait a minute. Damn. But what he was saying was damn right. And she couldn't even deny it. It was undeniable, because he gave some perfect examples of, look, we're expected to understand this. We're expected to have sympathy and empathy. We're supposed to know how to treat a woman and understand her past and understand how it got there and think about all of that. But they are not ever to consider any trauma that we dealt with when we were younger, or how we got the way that we are. They say run from that man. And that's the sound difference right there. They sometimes don't even think about it. And she showed it right there that she wasn't even thinking about it. It was never part of her thought process, in my opinion. She never even had to think about it. And I think she did a decent job of answering that. We just have to do the work. Even though she didn't have the answers, that's a great answer. We have to do the work.